Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Schlameel, Schlamazel, Hassenpfeffer Incorporated. That's right. We're doing it our way on tonight's episode of Those Were the Days, the show where we take a look at classic TV through a modern lens with nostalgic eyes. We're continuing to talk about Jumping the Shark, and we're chatting about Happy Days spinoff, Laverne and Shirley. I'm Steven, as always, and I'm always, as always, Lord, you'd think this is the first time I did this. Joined by Amy. Amy, go for it.
So in this episode, Laverne and Shirley spend an evening in the apartment of the future in a store window. And as someone who is currently apartment hunting, this was very triggering for me.
Audie. Travis.
All right, look, you're going to do this right, or you're fired. You're let go. You're loosed. You are no longer employed. Do you hear me? You're fine. Let's just do the show.
I was about to say, that's good, considering how badly I botched the intro. I thought that was a real threat. You had me real worried there for a second.
That worked well into my intro.
It sure did, yeah. You know what? I set it up for you.
Thank you for
could have played it off. Anyway, hey, everybody. Welcome to Those Were the Days. We're so excited to have you here to chat with us again about some classic TV. I hope you watched it. I hope you enjoyed it. We're talking about Laverne and Shirley Season 8, Episode 2. It's the episode that was Cindy Williams' last, hence the Jumping the Shark. Cindy Williams playing Shirley. She did not continue the show after this, but this was her swan song, and I guess we're here to figure out, was it a good one? Was this the right episode to exit on? I don't know. We're going to find out. But first of all, let me give you the synopsis about what Laverne and Shirley is. If for whatever reason you may have missed out on this cultural phenomenon, Laverne DeFazio and Shirley Feeney were best friends and roommates, coping with dates, neighbors, and each other during the late 50s and early 60s as they worked as bottle cappers for Schatz Brewery in Milwaukee. They later moved to Burbank, California in 1965 to start a new life when they got replaced at the brewery by an automated bottle capper. That's all of our stories, always being replaced by robots. I had forgotten that this show was being a spinoff of Happy Days, that it's actually set also in the 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
That eluded me completely watching this show. And why though? Because I feel like it should have, the setting or something going on in it should have indicated that it was the late 50s, early 60s, but it didn't feel that way. Their hair didn't strike me as like people. I think Squiggy might be the only 50s-like thing in the whole show.
Early on, it definitely had more of that. The earlier seasons in Milwaukee, because Lenny and Squiggy are definitely greasers.
Yeah.
And even Laverne and Shirley, the way they dress feels more 1950s. But by this point, it's like 1982, I think, in this season, 83 when they filmed it. It's set in like 67, and it doesn't really feel like that at all.
Right.
I remember Laverne wearing a lot of like poodle skirty type stuff in the beginning. And like that's why she's got the L, and it just carries over onto literally every piece of clothing she owns.
Yeah,
and I am into that.
That was something I had completely forgotten about, and then as I'm watching the episode, I'm like, this is amazing. I love the fact that she has just the L monogrammed on everything she wears. It was so good.
I've got some trivia behind that. The L, actually, since we're talking about it. Yeah. You know why Laverne had an L on her shirt or skirt in every episode of this show? Penny Marshall hated that in sitcoms you had to reestablish who was who all the time. So she thought it was unnatural for someone to say someone else's name that frequently and unnaturally in speech. And I agree with her. Like it's very difficult to introduce a new character without going, hello, you, and saying their name. So she came up with the idea of putting the L on all of her stuff, But the writers still wrote Cindy all these lines. It completely did not help at all. And she stayed annoyed with it the entire run of the series.
Fantastic.
But that's why it exists. That's why she put it in her character. Anyway,
Well, I mean,
Travis,
come
you
on,
were going
Steven.
to.
Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, when you're referring to somebody, you got to call them by their name
I
every
know.
single time you refer to them, Steven.
Sure, Audie. I mean, we got to do that all the time.
That is very true, Stephen.
We do it every beginning of the show, though. I mean, we announce the name and then you speak so people have something to track, you know. But this is audio. This is different. You know,
I don't want to
that's
get
true.
mixed up with Travis. That's, I mean,
No.
that's why we do it.
No,
Yes.
and that's a common mistake that people
Yes.
make.
All the time. Yeah, I see it on Twitter a lot, you know.
I'm looking at you and I'm having trouble figuring out which voice is which.
I'm so confused. But to back it up a little bit, let's back it on up. Relationships with Laverne and Shirley. I want to know where you guys land on this. Amy, how about you?
So the thing that I'm learning doing this show with you guys is that there are a lot of shows that I absolutely remember watching this show. I remember my little sister being big into Laverne and Shirley. But all of these, I fully could not tell you a single thing that happened in any episode. I mean, baby Michael McKean,
Aw.
but
Mhm.
yeah. So I definitely remember Laverne and Shirley, and we used to do the dance. My sister and I used to do the Schlamiel Schlamazel like all the time. I remember that in the kitchen in our socks, but that's, that's all I can actually recall.
That's actually a pretty strong memory, though. To do the
Yeah.
dance, that's a
Mhm.
thing. I've
Yeah.
never understood the dance or what it means,
Nope.
but it's
Nope.
you know, it's always been there. You just have to assume this sisterly bond, I guess.
Yeah.
When you watch that beginning of the show and they introduce with that, you're like, that must just be a thing for them. I don't get it.
It was what did I read? It's a Yiddish hopscotch,
Oh, okay, that
chant.
makes sense.
which is why in the last season after Cindy Williams left, that part of the opening became a bunch of school kids doing that
Oh,
on the sidewalk and Laverne walking by and like getting caught in the middle of it and then just sort of like laughing.
that's pretty
Okay.
good. Yeah, for the remainder of the one season that they did the show
Yes.
without Shirley. Audie, how about you? What's your relationship to this one?
This is one that I'd never really watched, but it's one of those you just know culturally because it was on all the time. I think this is one of the ones that Ted Turner grabbed and put on TBS reruns with a bunch of others. So I would always see it before or after a Braves game or something. Um, so it's one of those where like I know who Laverne and Shirley are. I know they had a show and there were other characters, but I never watched it regularly. But I could watch it and be like, okay, this is fun.
Yeah, right on. How about you, Travis?
I remember watching Laverne and Shirley reruns. I remember them. I remember Lenny and Squiggy. I don't remember a single thing from a single episode. The opening, I remember actually more for them parodying it in Wayne's World than I do from the show itself. But I remember. I just don't. It was one of those that just played and it was on all the time. The theme song I remembered, which is why the version that I saw on YouTube that did not have the opening or ending theme really threw me off, and I did not
Yeah.
like that at all.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was very upset. I started the video thinking, "All right, here we go. We're doing it. What happened? We just
We're
jumped
not
right
doing
into
it
it."
Yeah.
Yeah,
anyway.
we're not doing it. Yeah, I had the same experience. We'll talk about that in a second because I want to go down that thread. But for me, I do remember Laverne and Shirley. I remember watching. It came on Nick at Night for a little while alongside Happy Days. I don't think it was one of the mainstays. It's like they played it for a while and then they kind of didn't play it anymore. But I do remember the spinoff or the crossover episode of Happy Days where they met Laverne and Shirley out in a farm somewhere. And I was like, oh, holy crap. I didn't know this was a spinoff. And it blew my mind. And then, like, I remember watching some, but it didn't have a vibe that I really just wanted to watch it every night. Like, I'm sure it was, I might have been at this point in my Nick at Night viewing, getting past the age at which I wanted to watch this stuff. Which is funny. As a kid, I wanted to watch old TV more than when I was a teen.
Yeah.
Which I guess probably happens. You're like, oh, now I'll watch MTV where all the cool things are, which is a lie. I would have been much better off just continuing watching old TV. But yeah, so back to the theme song. We've talked about on this show multiple times how important a theme song is, because it seems the shows that last are the ones where we can just sing the jingle. And I hate that this happened, but in the YouTube video that we were able to find of this episode, the intro is cut off. And that threw me, like Travis said. Like, I don't know that I was really able to get my mind into the show till it was it was going, you know? Maybe when the hypnotist showed up, I was finally like tuned in. But
I definitely stopped it and found the YouTube video of the intro to play that first to make sure, okay, I'm better now.
It speaks to the importance of a theme song. Maybe what we didn't realize how critical that these theme songs actually were, you know, to get going.
Well, and especially when it's a show like this that ran for 8 seasons, and when it was back when things were appointment viewing only, a theme song was incredibly important, because you might be in the other room not paying attention what time it is, and you start hearing the theme song to Alf, and like I'm now diving through the house like I gotta watch it. So you're right. The theme songs are super important, and this is it's an objectively good little pop song too.
Yeah, it really works. It works for what they're trying to do. We're doing it our way. It's our way. Make all our dreams come true. I mean, I was singing that before I started the show. Like, I was sitting there thinking about it, like, and again, I hadn't watched Laverne and Shirley that much, but I've got the theme in my head, you know, and it's just so common with all these episodes that we've watched so far. So more theme songs to come on Those Were the Days. But yeah, so this episode of the show, Jumping the Shark, we're really testing what jumping the shark means. I looked up a list of Jumping the Shark episodes of classic TV, as I'm sure each of us probably did, to try and remember which one we needed to watch. And this came
probably the same list.
Yeah, they very likely.
Yeah, there was like 5 lists, and they had like 90% of the same shows on all of them.
Yeah. Yep. So this one, I was under the impression it was an episode about them moving to Manhattan, and that's not what happened. I think somewhere along the way, someone got confused on what episode we were watching, or they're labeled differently depending on where you go when they occurred in the season, because that's happened before. But either way, this is considered a Jumping the Shark episode, mainly because it was Shirley's last episode. Season 8 began, they had contracts, they were ready to roll, but Shirley's wasn't quite complete. Then they found out Shirley was pregnant, and they were like, oh snap, we're going to have to do a lot of shooting around this, and then scheduling became a thing, and then there's some nasty fallout, and Shirley left the show. We'll get to that in a little bit later in our trivia section. But anyway, yeah, so we start this show out where I guess based on the fact we didn't have an intro nor much of a lead up to what's going on, we kind of get dropped in the video that we did have out there, where Laverne and Shirley are in a department store window exploring the apartment of the future, which I thought was pretty great, because they said it was designed for New York in the year 2000, like the population density of the year 2000. I'm like, you know what? This isn't really far off.
It was actually pretty spacious for New York in the year 2000.
That is very spacious.
It was very accurate.
It made me think of the tiny home craze that's going on now. I was like, they started thinking about this back then. Good job.
Yeah.
And the thing was, when the episode started, and we don't get the opening theme, so I'm already like, my brain's already scrambled, and it just drops you into this, and I'm not remembering that the show is set in the 60s. And I'm looking around at this apartment set, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? It's this like weird pseudo Jetsons thing going on.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's fantastic, but it took me, and then I'm like, oh, that's right. The show's set in the 60s. Okay. Now it makes sense that it's the apartment of the future.
Yeah. So the show's set in the 60s, but the guy on the street is definitely dressed in 1970s clothes with a 70s perm.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, they just went, maybe we just don't talk about it. Maybe we just
no one will notice.
No one will care.
Close enough.
Yeah. So we're in this apartment that is clearly bigger than a modern New York apartment today, or even in 2000, because it has a separate bathroom and nobody's just taking a shower in the sink, you know, which is how you live there these days. And I guess Laverne and Shirley they have volunteered to live in this apartment they were voluntold, more likely. Thank you for the air quotes, Amy. They're like, do you want to keep your job? Well, you're going to volunteer to live in this tiny apartment in front of a window, doing everything that a person does in front of the window. And at first, this may seem peculiar, but Laverne immediately has no problem with it because go for it.
I completely forgot what a sex pot Laverne is. Oh, I love her.
Right.
I totally I'm sure it just is something that just sailed very casually over my head at the time, but man, she's a delight.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she was after this one dude on the street, and he's like, "You want to eat and go to a movie?" And she's like, "You and me." And she turned around with the arm hugging herself thing, and I'm like, "Oh, she's moving quick." She's just like, "Well, yeah, we'll eat dinner in a movie."
She's
but then we'll come
on
back
the
here."
glass.
Oh
She's
yeah,
like
right,
lipstick
all up on
prints
that.
Oh, yeah.
smeared across the glass.
Well, it's funny because the characters were originally going to be, and this is from the Wikipedia, but in quotes, two girls who date the fleet.
What?
And then that was their original like pitch for Happy Days, and then of course they had to kind of tone that down a bit. So I think Shirley just being the sex pot that she is a holdover from that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
good.
yeah. And at this point, like Laverne was the sex pot. Shirley was married,
Yeah,
though.
Laverne
Yeah.
was sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, though I don't recall seeing a husband anywhere, but that was probably just
We don't see him.
Well,
maybe this is
she
the get out
must
of
be
jail.
married if she's pregnant, Stephen.
Oh yeah, right. Oh, excuse me. This is the '60s. That's the only
Come
way this
on.
works. But she doesn't know she's pregnant yet.
she doesn't.
You're taking us all the way to the end there. This is the whole
know.
thing. But anyway, so they try to figure out like what are we gonna do, because Laverne is claustrophobic. She can't stay in this apartment forever, like for a whole weekend
tiny
or a week.
apartment.
Yeah, tiny apartment for a week. Was it a week or a weekend? I can't remember precisely.
A week.
A week,
A week.
yeah. So they go home, and then one of their friends comes over dressed like Cher. I cannot remember the festival name. What was it? The Bonophobia? Bono. I don't remember. But anyway,
No, it was Bonomania.
Bonomania, right? That they were
Yes,
going to go
yes.
to. This doesn't really play into anything that I recall, other than a great gag for somebody to dress like Cher for a hot minute. And they talk about, she expresses to Laverne, hey, you should just see a hypnotist, because she had a friend that saw a hypnotist. I can never remember any of
No,
these
it's
shows.
her.
No,
She
did.
speaks
She
about
did.
herself in the third person, and she
Yes.
saw
Yeah.
a hypnotist because she was feeling really guilty about dating married men. She was,
Oh,
you're not
that's right.
dating married men anymore? No, I am. I just don't feel guilty about it.
That was a good gag.
Ah,
That was really
so
good.
That was.
Okay, yeah. So then she figures out, I need a hypnotist to get me over my claustrophobia. Great work. Good deal. So the next day comes along. They're gonna get to see the hypnotist. Their doorbell's broken. This plays into it pretty well. I like this. The doorbell basically goes, "Arr," which was great all by itself. And the hypnotist comes over, and this is where we kind of wind up in Office Space territory. If you ever watched Office Space, the main character of that movie, his hypnotism gets interrupted in the middle by the hypnotist having a heart attack after saying relax like 35 times. And then he basically just is relaxed, and there's not a problem with anything ever again. This is kind of what we do here, where the hypnotist, I got to talk about the hypnotist outfit,
huh?
because I want to know what kind of gentleman wakes up and says, look good on me today? A light blue turtleneck with a gold medallion and a blazer.
Yep.
That'll look good on me today. Because that's what he shows up wearing, and I'm not convinced that it works on him.
Listen, it was Burbank. It was the 60s. Weird stuff happened, okay?
Yeah, maybe for that time. I'm telling you, it didn't look good then, doesn't look good now, won't ever look good. It was a bad move.
No.
Apologies to
And
all
it's
the
not
gold
like that was
medallion wearing people.
That was not a small medallion. That was like almost Flavor Flav territory.
It really was. It says,
No,
I'm
that
a
was work on that guy.
hypnotist on it.
He was wearing a buckler around his neck.
Mhm.
So I am a hypnotist and I'm here to hypnotize you. And he's got this little like portable swirly sign that goes around and around because that's how you hypnotize people. Look, I've seen
Right.
cartoons.
Not take
You
off the
think
medallion
like
and
the
swing it
giant
like most people do.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting. I'm like, that's what you should do since you're wearing it. Maybe that's for his. I'm just
Which
on the
means
bus.
the medallion was a fashion statement and not in use for hypnotism at all.
Yeah.
That was a purely cosmetic medallion.
Mhm.
Just to let people on the street know I'm a hypnotist. Look
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Emphasis on the hip.
Yeah. I'm a hypnotist. Know what I mean? So he starts hypnotizing. He gets down to business really quick. I mean, we only have
Yeah.
24 minutes of
does.
TV. We got to really move. So he sits down and he's like,
The part that got me, right, is Shirley's like, Laverne's trying to get rid of Shirley, and Shirley's like, "Oh, let me stay, let me stay." And, is it okay if I stay? And he's like, "Yeah, it's fine. She won't remember if you were here or not by the end anyway." And I'm like, "Oh God, red flags all
Yeah.
around. Get out, get out, get out.
You should probably kick this man out of your house. You don't
Do
know
not
him.
let this
Mhm.
man, no.
Yeah, you need
You're gonna
supervision.
get murdered. It is the 60s.
Well,
Yeah.
as we soon learn, he's not that great of a hypnotist, anyways, the way he
Well,
handles this session.
or he's
Yeah.
too good. Is he just
Yeah.
too good?
Maybe that's it. Maybe he doesn't realize how good he is, and that's the problem. Like, oh, I'm actually hypnotizing people? What a shock. So he sits down with them, has them look at the swirly thing, and starts telling them relax. And I've seen hypnotists, and they kind of they have a real almost ASMR vibe to their voices and how they
Mhm.
get you to relax. This guy's basically yelling at them. You're relaxing. Relax. Relax. And I'm like, that
Your
was the
ear is itchy.
yeah. Yeah. Which what I don't know. Some actors choose different ways of, following direction. But Laverne looks like her ear itches, but Cindy looks like, or Shirley looks like she's pretending to be a dog. Her foot's tapping, and she's like really getting in there. I'm like, they didn't say pretend to be a dog. They just said your ear itches. What are we? We're really selling it here. That stood out to me. So they're hypnotized. They're doing the test. Okay, your ear itches, and then he says that you're gonna hear when you hear a bell. You're going to remember everything that I told you, all the tools I'm giving you during this hypnotism session. And then he calls them chickens, or he says something about a chicken, and then the doorbell rings. But I can't remember the context.
You're claustrophobic. You're
So
claustrophobic because you're a chicken.
yeah,
Something like
so
that.
his hypnotism is you will hear a bell, after which you will follow all of my instructions. You will then hear a second bell, and you will forget any of this has happened. And just as he says that, the doorbell rings, and
Right.
then the
And
guy,
his reaction is to get up and go
yeah,
figure what that is
and go
and
figure
not,
out what that's.
hey,
Yeah, and so
let
he
me
doesn't
deal with
continue the
this actual.
hypnotism and talks to the guy fixing the bell, who's like, "Yeah, what's with her claustrophobia? Oh, it's because she's a chicken."
That's it.
Oh, that's right.
And then he's like, "All right, well, I'm
Mhm.
done. I'm done with the bell. Let me try it one more time." And he does it again, and then they're out of the hypnotism. So now they're hypnotized to turn into chickens whenever they hear a bell.
Anytime that they hear a bell. Which is just, man, if there is a sitcom comedy, that's what you're
Yeah.
looking for. Just the
It's one of my
Mhm.
favorite tropes is the hypnotism gone wrong trope. Oh,
Yep.
I love it every time. It's so
Mhm.
dumb.
It's
So
so
dumb.
incredibly dumb, and it always makes for just ridiculously hilarious
Mhm.
scenarios.
Oh yeah, because they like when they become chickens, they immediately just start buck 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 buck, and the doorbell rings, and
Mhm.
then they're back to normal. They don't even know what they were doing, which
Right.
plays
And
really
he
well.
immediately gets the bell part that he just said. So
He's like,
why
"Here's your
not worry about
bell.
Yeah, he gave them
You're
the little
good.
bell, and it's like anytime you're feeling claustrophobic, you ring the bell,
Ring the
right? That's
bell."
the whole thing. Because he puts her in the closet, and she's free of her claustrophobia. She's like, I'm great. Which I don't know if he really solved the claustrophobia because he turned them into chickens, but placebos are a thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
They
yeah.
convinced.
This episode both shows that hypnotism really works, and it's also bunk.
It's just not
Yes,
the way you want it to.
it works, but not how you want or think it should. And you're gonna
Yep.
pay somebody to trick you into thinking that you're well.
Yeah.
I'm okay
But
with that, you know?
Yeah,
oh,
I
sure.
could honestly go for that.
Yeah, if
And
you can trick me.
I think for me, the best part about the hypnotism thing was you will forget all of this in the second bell. So every time they come out of it, they're more and more confused why they've got their
Mhm.
Doing
hands on their
things.
hips and they're doing like whatever they're doing.
That's
It's
Oh.
really great.
it's so
Um,
good.
and as we go along, you know, Amy mentioned earlier that Shirley's pregnant in this episode, and they don't really tell you that, but they're kind of like she keeps alluding to going to the doctor and stuff like that, and like trying to figure out I don't know what's wrong with me, nobody knows. And then she comes out with sauerkraut and peanut butter on raisin bread sandwiches.
Which, let me tell you, if you are a female and you go to the doctor, the very first thing they think is wrong with you, regardless of your situation, is that you're pregnant. So that was like the
Yeah,
most unrealistic portion of this entire episode.
right. You
Because
go
any doctor's gonna go, "Are you pregnant?"
Hmm.
Mhm.
right.
That's
I'm
number
sure,
one.
Amy, you go to the doctor with like a fractured ankle. Are you pregnant?
Yeah,
Is that why your ankle's
that's
broken?
it's
It's kind of
every time.
it's kind of routine, and it's I guess that's because their treatment might have to change if that's if that's the
Yeah.
case. It might
No,
not be their
and that's true, right?
diagnosis. It's just they're trying to figure out eliminate things that they need to worry about.
Yeah.
If
I'm just saying.
yeah,
That would
but
have
you're
been
right.
number one. You don't feel
Mhm.
good? Fantastic.
Yeah. Is it possible you're pregnant? Well, maybe. Maybe. Who knows? But anyway, doctors don't know what's going on with her, so she's seeing all the wrong doctors. That's what we know for sure. But I
Mhm.
could tell from a
But
sauerkraut and peanut
they
butter
can
sandwich.
cure anything,
Yeah,
she says.
yeah, they
Any
can.
Mhm.
That's
disease.
true.
I don't know why you're afraid of doctors.
Yeah, they can
They can cure
fix
anything.
all the things. So now that we're chickens, it's time to go back to the apartment and spend our week living there, and doing our
Mhm.
thing. And this is where the meat of the episode really happens, where we really get to the fun stuff.
Yes,
And
you
my,
did.
Right.
my favorite thing.
Which
Oh, go ahead, Audi.
I'm just we skipped over it at the beginning. At the beginning of the episode, when they're in here with their boss, you keep hearing a ringing sound that he keeps saying is for him. And I was like,
Yes.
what kind of boss has somebody ring you for
Yeah.
whatever reason? Like, you're the
Do you
boss.
remember
You go where you want when you want.
back in department stores before they used to do like big speaker systems and things? There used to be like a bell that would ring different patterns that meant different things.
Yep.
Sure.
So it's like that. But
Right.
there's a
But
more
again,
important sound in that apartment.
right. But when you don't know what's coming, and I'm like,
Oh
why is the
yeah.
boss getting a ringing
Why are they
all the
ringing?
time? This is weird. And then it's like, okay, this is the reason that the boss gets rung all the time, so that we can have chickens later.
Yeah, the plot demands it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
Precisely.
my one note that I wrote down about this episode is that the kitchen of the future makes the Willy Wonka TV sound.
Yep.
It
That is
Has
the
to.
sound that
does.
Mike TV being
Yeah.
digitized and sent above our heads in a million tiny pieces.
Yes.
You're
I
right.
was like, I know this sound. It's deep in my soul.
I recognized it too, but I couldn't place it. I was like, that's a
Mhm.
very
Yeah, I didn't
familiar
think about that,
sci-fi
but
sound.
heck yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
Willy Wonka.
I even watched that recently. Great movie. Holds up.
Love that movie.
I love
So
everything about that riverboat ride. Like everything
oh
about it.
yeah,
Gene Wilder is
Mhm.
my hero
traumatized.
during that whole thing. And then I forgot they
Mhm.
like chop a head off an actual chicken in the
Yeah,
videos. Sam was watching and he was like, "Was that a chicken?" I was like, "Yeah, that's how
yeah,
Grandma
it
did
was.
it." I mean, why sugarcoat it? That's how we get chickens. Like, yes,
Mhm.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
real
much.
life, kid. That's what we
Mhm.
do. Things bleed for us to eat. Enjoy your
All right.
sandwich.
So when Laverne and Shirley are in the apartment and they're in front of a giant glass window, right? So we
Mhm.
occasionally get cuts to like customers in
The
the department
crowd.
store just watching them as the crowd grows, which is great. Did you have, and I'll start with Audie, did you have a favorite moment of them as chickens or whatever was going, like the silliness that was going on? Because
Oh,
I have one and I'm curious if anybody else had the same one.
I do have one.
I do.
when Laverne goes over and bends down to eat the Jetsons food off the floor, just that whole movement of her going down, and Penny Marshall is committed to this bit.
Yeah.
Good lord.
It's so hard.
And oh my gosh, that
And
had me
eating, like
rolling.
pecking at it like a chicken too is
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
good. All right, Stephen, you.
I
Did you
just
have?
really loved how Shirley was having such a hard time pressing the buttons and getting the magic beans on the plates. Like, you couldn't press the button and then get the plate over there fast enough to catch, and then they just bounced off the plate anyway because they're made of steel. So that just tickled. Random things that should be easy that are difficult. Just I love them. Like black and white made as seen on TV commercials just make me so happy.
All right, Amy. What about you? What was
All
your
right.
favorite moment
So
there?
it's two.
Okay.
But they may have happened pretty close to each other. So one was Laverne sitting on the orb light thing, like it was an egg. But then the other one was when Shirley's like fed up with Laverne and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna go get freshened up because at least one of us can look presentable." And she goes and she like stoops down into the tiny cupboard where the bathroom is, and the bell rings. You hear flapping. I lost it.
It's like she went in a real
was
life chicken
good.
cage.
Yeah.
The sitting down on the orb, the best part about that is Laverne like looking at it at first and having the thought, and you can see the chicken brain like,
Yeah.
that's an egg. I need to go
Need
sit
to-
on that egg.
Yeah.
For me, it was Laverne. I think it's the second time the bell rings and she looks up and sees herself in the mirror
Yeah.
and freaks and
Yep.
jumps back and then has to get Shirley and take her over to the mirror
Mhm.
at themselves. And that was the one that got me.
All right, we need to talk about this kitchen in the future for a hot second, though.
Yeah, we do.
So we've got the beans. That was option
Mhm.
one, and that was
Mhm.
from hitting the breakfast button, and it was not great. So the other option is the keyboard and the food. I forget what it said, but it's like the food dispenser cupboard, and all you had to
Right.
do was type in what you wanted, and it would be in there.
Yeah.
2000 really let me down, you
Yeah.
guys. Let me
Mhm.
tell you.
Well,
Mhm.
and then
And for some reason, they feel like having chicken.
imagine that.
Which launches at them and trying to save it for their audience, essentially, that they've got outside because they are selling this apartment of the future. And she's like, got the chicken by the leg.
Mhm.
First of all, she caught that chicken, which came out with some heat. Like
Yeah, dude.
it shot
hot.
out of that cupboard.
Yeah. And she's like, ah, ha, ha.
And I want to know what kind of microwave they were using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I've
like
never
when my
seen one.
mom got her new convection oven, honestly. And
Mhm.
you got to adjust for that.
Yeah, that is the crispest skin I've ever seen come out of a microwave.
Well, some of it. Some
I
of it.
also
Yeah,
Some
loved
of it's
how
very crisp.
they took it out
they painted
as
it.
chickens.
Yeah.
As chickens with nothing like, but the heat was fine, and then they just
Uh-huh.
mourned it, which was just
That is-
oh Lord, it was so funny.
They mourned the
Exactly.
chicken, and then later on, when their boss comes back in and they're chickens again, and he picks it up, they freak out at him and like slap it
Yeah.
out of his hands.
Yeah, they peck him for taking the
Peck at
chicken.
It's like the whole episode setup, hijinks.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly
And it
what
was
this
great.
was all about. And one thing I loved
And it
about the
somehow
two,
gets worse.
them being chickens, I like that they both took two different approaches to their chickens.
Mhm.
Shirley
Mhm.
tucks her hands under her armpits while Laverne puts hers on her hips. It was all a very well
Yep.
thought out decision of how we're going to chicken. We can't just be the
Mhm.
same. And if you know some of the
No.
turmoil behind the scenes, there was no way they were going to do the same thing at all. One is going to be better than the other. They're going to find out. But yeah, man. So we're going along this whole thing, and it's just hijinks, one after the other. And then like cool dude on the street shows up who Laverne was like making out with through glass in previous scenes.
Mhm.
And all I can think is, oh no, this is the part where she loses him because she's a chicken, and that's super weird. That doesn't happen. Like where
Nope.
I would
No.
run and I'd be like, this is breached. Like even watching this episode, this almost breached the awkward line to me. Like I've got a line of like, this is funny. Ooh, now I'm nervous and now I'm embarrassed for them and now I don't know what to do. And this kind of got there for me. I was like, oh, are we really? Yeah, we're animals. We're really committed. We're gonna do this thing. Every time someone pretends to be an animal, reminds me when I volunteered at a theater once, a play theater with actors. Actors are weird, just as people. And I mean that
Mhm.
like in a loving way, y'all are
Yeah.
weird, actor people.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting
Mhm.
there just kind of watching the people mill about, before it's time to do stuff. And a dude starts singing like a chimp, sings a song like a chimp and is like balancing on chairs and stuff. I'm like, oh, surely he'll quit in just a second. This is just no. He finished a 3.5 minute song as an ape. And I've never been so weirded out in my life. Just like this bit got old. I can't fake smile anymore. I'm done. I need to go to the bathroom. So that's what this reminded me of. Is just that whole chimp incident when I volunteered at the theater. Good time. Everyone should volunteer at a theater. Um, but anyway, he comes in, and this is where they find out, like, oh, what do you mean we're chickens? Because he drops into the apartment, right? And stop me if I've missed any more highlights. But he drops in, and he's like, that was hilarious. No, what do you mean? And
Yeah.
he says, that was the best chicken. I've never seen anybody so good at pretending to be a chicken. They're like, what do you mean chickens? We're not chickens. What is all this about? And then they find out, oh no, okay, this is what's going. Oh, they share.
'Cause
So he's seen it in a
He'd
hypnotist
seen it in
act.
Vegas.
Yeah,
Which
Yes.
this is now that I didn't think about it at the time, but then Steven's saying that he would have been out, and it's very surprising that this guy is stuck around. If he knows that they are susceptible to hypnotism, and now he's like, let me just come inside. Red flags.
more red flags.
Our sensibilities have changed in the last 50, 30 years, 40 years. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, so he's like, well, I'll prove it to you. So he had Shirley cover her ears, and she rings the bell, and Laverne begins acting like a chicken, and Shirley thinks this is hilarious. And he's like, okay, he rings the doorbell, rings the bell, stops Laverne from being a chicken, and then vice versa. However, Laverne is going to get what Laverne wants, and that's some alone
she
time with this gentleman. So he turned her into a chicken. She's like, we could just take her out to the car, take her to the apartment, lock
Put
her
her in
up,
the backyard.
put her in the backyard, and then we'll have the place to ourselves. Oh yeah, that's what we'll do. And so that's
Just met him, Laverne.
I know.
Through glass.
You don't even
Doesn't
know the
stop
guy.
her though.
Don't even know the guy.
You go, girl. Just be safe.
He could be a murderer, but probably not.
Yeah.
It's probably 35% chance he's a murderer.
Did anybody else want to see the scene of them taking Shirley out as a chicken, taking her to the car, taking her to the apartment?
I mean, yes.
Yeah, sure. I would love to see them go through that.
The fact that he grabs the plate with the little beans so that they can continue to sprinkle them all the way.
Let her out with the beads. Oh man, yeah. So then the next day comes around, things have settled down. They're not chickens anymore, and this is where we find out, Shirley's got her call, and something about the rabbit died. I don't understand any of this.
I didn't get that either.
That's very old terminology for pregnancy tests when you used to have to go to the doctor to get that done.
Oh, okay.
That was the term that meant that the test came back positive. The rabbit died. I don't remember the exact reasoning behind that. Amy, you might.
I want to say that they did actually inject rabbits at one point.
And that was
phrasing?
It's in an Aerosmith song too.
Yeah.
What kind of weird witch doctory stuff is going on in the 1960s?
There's a reference. It is.
The rabbit
Today
died.
I learned.
Yeah.
Yes. They did actually.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Did it work? Was it conclusive?
I mean, as conclusive as at the time it was done that you could be. Short of like asking the local witch.
It was an early form of pregnancy test, and then they stopped doing it, and they just kept the terminology. The phrase stuck around.
I mean, we have a lot of that, That's not unusual to keep a phrase that no one knows where it came from anymore. Wow, okay, the rabbit died. I'm gonna remember that one. because that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think Shirley has probably a lot more clues that she's pregnant that she could work with if she was thinking about it, based on my understanding of
Mhm.
biology. Maybe
You
not.
mean if they had someone besides a male writing this episode?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. They were too scared to talk about, anything
Listen,
else.
she's got a lot going on. She's
Right.
about to spend a week in a closet with a big window out on the world. You're gonna overlook some stuff, and that's
Right.
we've
Mhm.
Gonna
literally
miss
not
some
seen
early
her
warnings.
husband
Yeah.
this whole time. It's fine.
If
You
you're
miss
gonna
stuff.
put
You
me
miss stuff.
in an apartment in a window, I at least want to not be able to see out. Like I don't want to see that there are
Sure.
people out there. Like if
Yeah.
I had to choose, I wouldn't want them to see me. But this is an advertisement, so I'd be like, look, I'll go in there. I just don't want to like have to look at people in the window. And if I'm walking down the street, I don't want to watch people who are watching me watch them. I'm not interested in that. I
Right.
don't even like going to celebrity walk of fames because you have to walk by and it's like, I don't really want your autograph that you're charging $10 for, but I'm gonna look at you because I have to. And that's weird for
Mhm.
both of us because I'm not coming over there and you won't have a line. Like I've been in that situation before. I remember standing around at the Dragon Con with the guys from the Guild. You remember when that was like the
Yeah, yeah,
only show on the
Uh-huh.
internet? They were standing over
yeah.
there with no line, and I'm just like, I don't want to spend any money. And they're like, hey, you want a picture? And I was like, okay. And then I got a free picture with the guys with the Guild. But it was weird. I was like, I don't want to like stare at you. We made Richard Hatch
Yeah.
laugh because we're like, sorry, we don't mean to just gawk, but you're over there.
Mm.
And he's like, yeah, we get it. I said, okay. It's a mundane celebrity interaction for you. But yeah, so that's the whole shebang. This is jumping the shark, and it's jumping the shark because Cindy Williams' last episode. So we got to talk a little bit about the trivia behind Laverne and Shirley, because you watch Laverne and Shirley, like, Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams probably got along so well. They're like sisters on this show. It ran for almost 10 years. No, they did not get along in the least bit. Gary Marshall said they were constantly at each other's throats. It was very hard to make this show, and each of them always wanted the same amount of lines as the other. It was a very contentious set. So much so that the cast of Happy Days actually worked at a studio set next to them and would hear the fighting from inside the Laverne and Shirley set and would get disturbed by it and have to stop. So they didn't get along, is what we're saying. That's the big nugget of facts I got out of this because I had no idea.
Which makes it
I
more
mean,
impressive.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
I thought the same, yeah. Like to pretend to have that sisterly relationship in a show acting like you like each other, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a
Mhm.
lot. But yeah, I was really shocked to learn that for sure. But so Cindy Williams' last episode, it was her last episode because she became pregnant. She had her new contract coming up, and they listed out the schedule. And according to her, it had her working on her due date, like on, around, in between, everywhere where she was going to be a new mom. And she's like, I can't do this. They went back and forth, and finally they couldn't come to any agreement. So she exited the show. Then she argued that they fired her because she was pregnant, which if you follow along, it kind of
Yeah.
like you're setting me up so it's impossible for me to do my job
Right.
because I'm having a baby. Then you are firing me because I'm pregnant. That is kind of how the logic rolls. So she and her husband sued for $20 million, which is pretty fair, and then ended up settling out of court for an undisclosed amount. But definitely put a stain on the whole operation. Because now you've got Laverne and Shirley, which you mistakenly named your show after your two title characters. So if you lose one of them, you ain't got a show no more. But they tried because they had season 8 already set up. So she leaves in episode 2. And they finished the season without her. Not
And
going
they
to
were going
work.
to do a 9th season. It
Yes.
rated high. The ratings had dipped, but it was still rated well enough that they were going to do a 9th season. And Penny Marshall said, that's fine. Can you move it to New York?
Mm-hmm.
And that was where the studio was like, you know what? That's going to be expensive. Never mind.
Yep.
We'll just not do We'll just not do another one.
So I have a pretty decently long factoid about the whole ending of this show that I thought was pretty interesting. I'm just going to read it to keep things simple. Penny
Go for
Marshall
it.
stated in interviews that she did not want to come back for the series' 8th season once she learned Cindy Williams planned to depart the show after only a couple of episodes. Marshall was on vacation on Long Island when her agent called her up and told her that ABC planned to sue her if she didn't return. Marshall agreed to return, but told ABC executive Gary Nardini that since Williams was no longer on the show, she wanted to be paid double the amount per episode and have a larger stake in ownership in the show. Nardini agreed, but Marshall later found out that despite not being in most of season 8, Cindy Williams had also received ownership or points in season 8 episodes in which she wasn't in, which angered Marshall. When season 8 of the series pulled in decent ratings, finishing number 25 for the year, ABC wanted Marshall to return for a 9th season. Marshall said she would only return after a substantial salary increase and for the series to be filmed in New York. ABC rejected the demands and thus ended the series. The whole points thing alludes to them also being really upset at each other anytime one made different money than the other. Was all... Which kind of sours the show to some degree to me. I'm like, dang, y'all really just didn't need to be in the same room with each other. Like, you needed to do different shows. But it was making money, and the episodes were great. It was one of the highest rated shows. So they actually had taken another show. I forgot, it was like Uncle Larry or something. I can't remember the name of the show, but they just rehashed a lot of scripts from that show that weren't used into Laverne and Shirley episodes. So they could have probably made different episodes out of this.
And I think what helped too is a lot of the comedy in this was like slapstick physical comedy.
Yeah.
And so like there's something to that can, I think, make for an easier time when you're dealing with somebody you don't necessarily get along with, because it's not a lot of banter back and forth
Sure.
per se, where there's got to be like good chemistry. I'm sure that helped.
And you got a job to do, you know?
Yeah.
You're paid to get on set, and you're paid to be this character for X amount of time a day. You just got to do it. Just don't talk to each other any other time. Like, just you go to your quarters, she goes to hers, and you come back in and you do the show. There's probably comedy teams that have been that way in the past, you know?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, sure
famously, Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman didn't always get along. It wasn't nearly as contentious as this, but like they just had very different personalities, so they'd do the show. They'd get along well enough.
Yeah.
But then
the big one
on.
for me was Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey in Dirty Dancing. Notoriously did not get along.
Really? I had no idea.
That made that movie even more impressive when I finally saw it, because they like their chemistry on screen was great.
I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Love and hate, it's a fine
Okay, let me throw out mine then. Mine was the show Castle with Nathan Fillion and Stan Kotick. Like, apparently they got to the point where they would film their scenes separately.
Oh, geez.
The two leads of the show who had a romantic relationship.
Wow.
Oof.
Yeah, this happens a lot, though. That's why they do a lot of screen tests with two actors, just to see, like, are they going to get along? Or are they not going to get along? And why some episodes you see, you're like, there's no chemistry. Or some movies you watch, you're like, they don't jive.
Well, and it's why you see like musical acts and bands that end up with rotating or changing memberships. It's very rare to see the same members of a band last for 10 or 20 years, because they're around each other constantly. When they're touring, they're stuck on a bus. And so it's amazing when a band like 311 has had the same lineup for like 25 years.
Well, some of that's like
nuts.
If you start young and you get your band members when you're just teenagers, you kind of grow into it together. It's a little easier to keep. Once like look at Journey or something like that, once you're established musicians, which they were at the time when they formed, and you're like just putting out calls for I know a guy or whatever, you become a business less than a family, and it's more about we're going on tour, you get your bus, I get my bus, let's write great music and make some money.
And what you see more now is bands that they'll do an album cycle, they'll do a tour, and then they all go their separate ways and do other projects for a year or two and then come back.
Sure.
And that helps them keep their sanity. And like TV shows don't necessarily get to do that, or at least they didn't that's a little bit better now, where it's like, because imagine, like, say the kids from Stranger Things, if they didn't get along well,
Yeah,
how difficult that show would be to make. But they do, so it helps, and like they end up
Mhm.
missing each other when they're apart.
sure. Like
Um,
summer camp, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy to think that like two people could not get along that much and make a show that lasted for 8 years
Yeah.
because the contracts don't go that long, so they had to
Mhm.
re-sign contracts to keep
Yeah.
this going.
Well, neither one of them was going to be the one that was going to
That's
quit.
true.
Nope.
I'm
It
not
was
leaving
a
if she's
lot of
not leaving.
through spite, all things are possible.
It's why I'm really glad when we started doing this show that we put together that rider for when we do things live that we all get our own room, you know? That was
Yep.
what I thought was
Mhm.
most important when we got together was just it's established right away. Live shows require separate green rooms. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll see how far that goes. But yeah, man, I don't have a whole lot else going on with Laverne and Shirley. I guess the big question is, without Shirley, would you guys even watch the show? Does it even sound interesting?
I mean, I can't really say that it sounds as interesting without Shirley. Like just Laverne and then the side characters might work for a couple of episodes, but it's their interplay that
Mhm.
makes
Yeah.
it work.
I'd watch it just to see it like I'd watch a car accident.
Yes.
Like, I don't wanna sit there and stare at it too much. I wanna see what happens.
I can't look away.
Do a
Yeah.
Yeah.
little
Morbid
rubbernecking.
curiosity. All
Mhm.
right. Well, how are you going to make Laverne and Shirley without Shirley? Maybe
Yeah.
show me. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is
Yep. Oh,
definitely
that's
one
how?
of
Okay, I'm out.
this is definitely one of those categories of you just quit. You just don't make more episodes. Just stop. But
Mhm.
again, like it's TV, it is contracts and scheduling, and it's working versus not working. I guess
Because
at
you've
the end of the
sold
day.
Right.
you've sold the advertising.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Plus,
that's the big
and
part on the network side.
yeah, and it's not just the actors either. It's all the crew members too. All the union
Yep.
crew members that have
Yeah.
jobs to do
Yeah.
that are going to get paid whether the show gets produced or not. So those
Yep.
producers are going to make sure that show gets made.
That's a good
Right.
point. Yeah, we'll pull in anyway. There was some other trivia I read, some minor things. They had a handful of different people that tested for Shirley early on that they considered bringing back to put on the show, but they didn't want to come or there's scheduling problems with them at that point. Some folks got more popular. I can't remember. There's one actress who was really in for Shirley, and they were like, "Nah, I don't think so. We'll go with Cindy Williams." She would have been available the whole run and was apparently great, but whatever. It doesn't matter. What we got was a great show overall. Was Laverne and
Mhm.
Shirley ran for 8 whole seasons. At least one of the characters made it the whole way. But it was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed going back and checking out the show. I remember the set. I remember, and I hated we didn't get a Lenny and Squiggy in this episode. That was a
Yeah.
I was
bummer.
Yeah.
that bummed me out, but I think that was another one. Is season 8? Michael McKean wasn't in very many episodes because he was
Yeah.
busy working on This Is Spinal Tap
Yeah,
Poor guy.
Mhm.
at the time.
yeah.
So
Such a
yeah,
shame.
he made the right choice there.
Yeah.
Who remembers
Yeah.
the animated spinoff? The
I read
animated
about it. I
series?
don't even remember that at
Remember
all.
that.
I weirdly remember that it existed, and it was reading about it. I'm like, Laverne and in the what? And then like I had these like flashes of memories of like seeing that at some point where they had joined the Army Reserve during the show, so they spun off and made an animated series about them in the army.
Oh my gosh.
I just don't know where some of these plots get greenlit. Like you say them out loud, and it's like this sounds stupid. This just sounds like
They
a
had a
really
lot of
bad.
really good drugs
Yeah.
Yeah.
at the time.
Mhm.
Like
You're
I've
just
read
like, yeah.
I've read some things that's like, oh, we shouldn't, or attempted like we're gonna roll this into a different show or that show, and I read the synopsis, I'm like, good. I'm glad this failed. This was a terrible idea. Like, who came up with this? It happens a lot.
I just have to read this really quick because
Sure.
this happened during the run of the show, mind you. This wasn't like afterwards they were trying to recapture some Laverne and Shirley magic. No, this was while Laverne and Shirley is going on. They make during the run of the main show an animated spin-off called Laverne and Shirley in the Army began airing on Saturday mornings. The first program was aired October 10, 1981, featured the voices of Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams playing Laverne and Shirley in the Army with a talking piglet drill sergeant named Squealy.
Yep.
What?
So, a quick math question for you: how many drugs over what period of time would you need to consume in order to come up with that?
I've
mean,
never
what are
done
like
drugs, but I assume mushrooms are involved.
I mean, listen, I did some all-nighters in art school in college, and I feel like by about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, you're going, "No, squealy, it's like squiggy, but it's squealy." You know? Like, I could see it, honestly.
Apparently, the fawn showed up at some point too.
In the
Good lord.
cartoon?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Well, yeah,
geez.
eventually it became Laverne and Shirley with special guest star the Fonz.
Perfect. Of course.
Okay. Go look it up because the way that they are drawn is like, this is how we're going to get the young boys to watch Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, really? Got
Oh,
some
boy.
enhanced areas. For some
Yeah.
reason, it being the
Yeah.
era that it was, all I can think of is the Lord of the Rings cartoon style animation, where you watch it for 10 minutes and
That's
vomit because it's
awesome.
swirling all over the place, and it's like, what are we doing? Just
Now, this
LSD
is more
trip.
Hanna-Barbera style stuff, but
Okay, I
they
can
got
Yeah,
the
no,
take
girls
it.
looking good.
this is cheap run of the mill animation for Saturday mornings just to cash in.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
But it's
That's like
proof positive
C-Lab.
that literally
See lab.
anything can become a cartoon. Like they will animate anything. This was the era
Or
of
give it a shot.
Rambo had a
Yep.
cartoon.
I mean, they were paying nothing to get it all animated overseas.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So, why not?
we had Hulk
Sure.
Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling at this time.
Oh,
Mhm.
jeez. Yeah, TV was broke for a time. You know, I can't say we've
Oh,
recovered, but it was broken some
Yeah.
weird ways back
listen,
then.
listen. If you think we aren't watching an episode of Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling at
Yeah,
some
you
point
are
for this
wrong.
show, you are sadly mistaken, sir.
We will make up a topic to make it fit.
Yeah,
I
Mhm.
will.
We have no shame.
it's just a straight
None
up topic
whatsoever.
like ideas no one should have greenlit.
That's kind of just thinking, like,
Not a bad
Why
idea.
does this exist? There's a good theme. I like it.
... What?
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for coming out and enjoying Laverne and Shirley with us and chatting about the show. If you have any comments or anything you want to share with us about the show, you can send that to thosewerethe.days@gmail.com or tweet us at those days show on Twitter. Did we get anything this time, Travis?
Nothing on Twitter, and we also got no emails.
No emails. We got to resolve that. We gotta get some
Send us
more
the email.
comments in there. If you're a YouTuber, I'm putting the shows on YouTube, so go to YouTube and watch them. Look for Two
Yeah.
Dorks TV on
Mhm.
YouTube for the channel and watch them and leave comments there. You can do that. That's always an
And
option.
and if you're on TikTok, you can find Those Days Show at TikTok. I need to get better about posting stuff on there, or anybody can. Any of you guys
Yeah.
can as well. Don't forget.
I posted a couple previously ons, which if you're not listening to the audio show, Travis puts a lot of great work and effort into the previously ons, and they're great.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty proud of this week's too.
All right. So get involved, man. And if you like Discord, like if you're on Discord, not like Discord like angry people talking to each other. You like discussions. We have a Discord server. You can join that at twodorks.net/Discord, where I'm putting forum channels, which is like a new thing, about each episode. So if you want to talk about the episode or leave a note in Discord about what you thought about this particular episode of TV, you can do that. So that's a little bit about how to get in touch with us. We'd love to have more interaction and more reviews and stuff on all these different podcasting sites. But for now, I'm going to let Amy tell us where we're going next week. What are we doing, Amy?
Ooh.
All right, let me tell you, I went back and forth on this one like an awful lot, trying to decide what we were gonna do. But after previewing the episode of Family Matters where Urkel has a killer marionette ventriloquist dummy, I decided not to do that one. So we did say
Thank you.
that shows gotta have a good theme song, and we've got a classic because we're doing "I Dream of Jeannie."
Oh, man.
The
Yes.
song is now in all your heads.
Yep, it's in there.
So we're actually doing a two-parter episode. So it's available on Amazon Prime, which lists it as season 5, episodes 7 and 8. According to IMDb, it's episodes 3 and 4. Your mileage may vary, but it's the Guess Who's Going to Be a Bride episodes.
Oh, snap. The old jump the
Nice.
shark
Mhm.
of the will they, won't they is ended. What does the
Mhm.
show do
Yep.
Yeah, I love
Mhm.
this. The answer is nothing good. That's that's where we're going. That's fantastic. I'm so excited. I Dream of Jeannie was one of my faves as a kid.
Uh-huh.
It had astronauts in it, like before we went to the
Yeah.
moon. Like,
Yeah.
imagine that. That's
Yeah.
cool stuff. Major Healy. This is great. I can't wait. I love this show. I love everything about what we're doing. Thank you, Amy, for that. So watch that on your before next Monday. Monday is your day. It's when your homework's due. Get it in. And thank you guys so much for listening to Those Were the Days. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Buck, 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 buck.